In a world where uncertainty and struggle often overshadow hope, there is a divine gift that has the power to uplift hearts and renew weary spirits. It transcends human limitations, shatters walls of shame, and pours out unmerited favor on anyone willing to receive it. That gift is God's grace. Right now, in this moment, you might be questioning whether you are worthy of forgiveness, or if you have stumbled too often to ever find your way back to wholeness. Perhaps you feel disqualified by the mistakes of your past, or beaten down by circumstances beyond your control. Yet there is a tender voice calling you toward a love that knows no boundaries, a mercy that never runs dry, and a grace that washes over your life in ever-flowing abundance. Grace can be a difficult concept to grasp, particularly when our daily reality is filled with expectations, performance demands, and the knowledge that our best efforts sometimes fall short. We live in a culture that often ties our worth to our achievements, our appearance, or our ability to meet certain standards set by those around us. It is easy to feel as though we must constantly prove ourselves in order to be accepted, loved, and valued. But grace dares to challenge those expectations. Grace is the audacious and unmerited favor that invites you to step out of the endless cycle of striving. It reminds you that there is a love stronger than every failure, every regret, and every challenge you have faced so far. This is not about dismissing personal responsibility or becoming complacent in pursuit of excellence. Rather, it is about discovering that God's generous kindness meets us in our weakness and empowers us to rise to unimaginable heights. It is about learning that we do not have to be defined by our brokenness or by any harsh label the world has placed upon us. Grace is the divine invitation to rest in the knowledge that we are cherished, chosen, and welcomed into a relationship that transforms us from the inside out. In the coming moments, we will explore how God's grace challenges our assumptions about our own unworthiness, how it offers a pathway to redemption when everything seems lost, and how it shapes our relationships with others in profound and life-altering ways. As you listen, open your heart to the possibility that your story can be rewritten, your burdens can be lifted, and your spirit can be refreshed. Allow these words to resonate within you because they are a reminder that hope is real and that divine favor is available to you here and now. God's grace is woven into the fabric of creation, shining forth even in the darkest seasons of our lives. It is the unwavering declaration that you are loved, not because of what you have done, but because of who God is. This love is so complete and encompassing that it seeks you out when you least expect it. It appears in the smile of a stranger, in the kindness offered by a friend at the precise moment you thought nobody cared, and in the gentle nudge in your heart that whispers a truth you have long suppressed. Even if you have walked away from your faith or questioned whether any higher power listens to your cries, grace calls you back with unrelenting compassion. In many faith traditions, grace is understood as an attribute of God's character that cannot be bought or earned. This is both its beauty and the source of human confusion. We have been taught through nearly every facet of life that we must compete, that we must measure up, and that love and favor come to those who deserve them. Yet grace flips that narrative on its head. It assures you that you are already seen, already known, and already cherished. Whether you have made one mistake or 1,000, whether you are at the highest point of success or struggling to stay afloat in the torrent of life's hardships, grace extends the same hand of mercy and the same invitation to belong. Yet grace is more than a vague sense of goodwill. It has the power to change you if you allow it to seep into the core of your being. Too often we believe grace is a free pass to continue on a destructive path, but genuine grace penetrates the heart and calls you to a better way. It says that though you have fallen short, you are still beloved, and that belovedness carries with it a renewed sense of identity and purpose. This is the paradox. You do not earn grace by changing your behavior, but receiving grace with humility often changes your behavior in radical ways. You move from a self-centered perspective to a posture of gratitude, where every breath feels like a gift, and every interaction becomes an opportunity to share the goodness you have encountered. Many people grapple with the notion of whether they deserve grace. They look at their past mistakes, the lingering guilt, and the pain they have inflicted on themselves or others. They assume they must earn their way back into a position of favor before they can stand confidently in the light. Yet the liberating truth is that grace meets you exactly where you are. You do not have to climb a ladder of penance, prove your moral worth, or present a spotless record. This is not to say that actions have no consequences, or that apologies and reparations are insignificant. Rather, it is to emphasize that grace is the starting point, not the end goal. You are invited to step onto a path of healing and growth because grace has already opened the door. If grace were merely a static idea, it would not have the capacity to revolutionize hearts and minds. But grace is dynamic and ever-present, thriving in the context of relationships. It is in community that we often see how grace changes the way we view ourselves and others. It softens our hearts toward people we once dismissed and compels us to offer forgiveness where bitterness might otherwise fester. When you have tasted the sweetness of unmerited kindness in your own life, you begin to see everyone else as individuals in need of the same love. That shift in perspective can restore families, reconcile friendships, and heal communities torn apart by division. There's a paradox at the heart of grace that can baffle the human mind. Though it is freely given, it did not come without a cost. In Christian thought, the cost was paid by Christ, whose sacrificial love opened the doorway for sinners to walk into communion with a holy God. This truth underscores the depth of God's love, for it was not a casual, effortless sort of benevolence, but a grace poured out through profound sacrifice. Understanding this can stir a sense of awe and gratitude that reshapes how you approach worship, prayer, and daily life. It shifts the focus from religious rituals performed out of obligation to genuine expressions of gratitude that spring forth from a heart touched by compassion. When you embrace grace, you begin to see it as not merely a one-time event, but as an ongoing relationship. The Christian faith describes this as abiding in grace, meaning that you continually live in the knowledge of God's love and remain open to the transformative work of the Holy Spirit. This process can be marked by highs and lows, victories and setbacks, as you learn to trust that you are loved in spite of weaknesses you have yet to conquer. Some days you might feel strong and assured that grace covers all your faults. Other days, shame might creep back into your mind, convincing you that your past disqualifies you from receiving or sharing this gift. That is why grace needs to be revisited and renewed in your life, allowing you to continually rest in the truth that you are covered by God's unrelenting kindness. The journey of grace becomes an adventure, teaching you that your identity is not rooted in your failure, but in the fact that you are beloved by the one who created you. It releases you from the corrosive effects of guilt and condemnation, inviting you to walk forward in confidence. This does not eliminate all the challenges you will face in life, nor does it mean you will never stumble. Yet there is a profound difference between stumbling when you believe every misstep can cast you out of love, and stumbling when you know that grace is ever present to lift you up. That assurance empowers you to take risks in loving others, to serve with humility, and to give generously of your time, talents, and resources. Instead of hoarding what little you have, you begin to operate from a mindset of abundance, confident that the same God who provides grace also meets your daily needs. You experience the joy that comes from setting aside self-centered ambitions and discovering that the greatest fulfillment is found in reflecting the grace you have received. It is as if a giant weight has been lifted off your shoulders, and with that freedom, you can finally find your true purpose in being a channel of blessing to others. As you walk in grace, you start to comprehend that it is not just about you. While it certainly comforts your heart and restores your relationship with God, grace also positions you to be an instrument of healing in a world rife with pain. Consider the countless people who believe they are beyond redemption, the individuals who languish under the shame of their past or the burden of constant failure. They might have encountered judgment, rejection, or even condemnation from those who claim faith, but have not fully grasped the depth of God's mercy. For them, a single act of genuine grace can ignite a spark of hope that changes the trajectory of their entire life. To move in grace in your relationships, you must first remember that it was not your own virtue that won you favor. When you carry that awareness, you are less inclined to judge harshly or condemn swiftly. Instead, you become a vessel that brings forgiveness, second chances, and compassionate understanding to those around you. This does not mean ignoring injustice or excusing harmful behavior, but it does mean creating an environment where people feel safe enough to be vulnerable, confront their issues, and seek restoration without the fear of being permanently labeled. It takes courage to extend grace to others, especially when they have wronged you. Pride may whisper that you have every right to withhold forgiveness, or that the offender must earn their way back into your good graces. However, reflecting on the unmerited favor you have received can soften your stance, reminding you that you did not climb up an ivory tower of virtue to reach God's love, but were instead lifted by divine mercy when you least deserved it. That perspective does not negate the hurt you have suffered or the boundaries that may need to be set in unhealthy situations. It does, however, offer an alternative to hatred and perpetual resentment. Grace also plays a transformative role in how you view yourself. Many people carry hidden wounds, believing they are destined to remain trapped in cycles of self-destructive behavior or paralyzed by fear of failure. Such beliefs are often rooted in shame, the feeling that who we are at our core is inherently flawed. Grace addresses this issue at its source. It declares that you are not beyond hope, and that despite your struggles, you possess immeasurable worth. By internalizing this truth, you can begin to dismantle the barriers that keep you from stepping into the fullness of who you were created to be. You move from seeing yourself as a perpetual victim of circumstance or a sum total of your mistakes to recognizing that you have a unique purpose and a destiny shaped by a loving Creator. In practical terms, living under the banner of grace encourages you to cultivate a life of prayer, reflection, and study that invites deeper intimacy with God. These spiritual practices are no longer tasks performed out of obligation or fear, but rather moments of connection with the source of all mercy and love. Over time, as you absorb the reality of grace, you find yourself developing a heart of gratitude that spills over into every aspect of your existence. It might be reflected in the way you greet a neighbor, the patience you show a child, or the empathy you extend to a stranger who seems lost or alone. True grace also compels you to dream boldly. Many people stop dreaming because they believe they lack the skills or background to accomplish what burns within their hearts. Fear of failure silences their desire to pursue meaningful goals. But when grace teaches you that you are not defined by your shortcomings, you begin to take steps of faith. You realize that your identity as a cherished child of God is the strongest foundation upon which you can build your life. Yet it is important to note that grace is never an endorsement of complacency. If you sense a calling on your life, grace equips you to walk that path, but it does not absolve you from the work required to develop your gifts. Rather, it provides a safe environment in which you can learn and grow, trusting that mistakes will not disqualify you from your purpose. This sense of security allows you to move forward with humility, to learn from setbacks, and to cultivate a spirit of excellence without succumbing to paralyzing perfectionism. In relationships, grace fosters deeper connections by eroding the walls of pride and judgment that often separate people. When you remember that you too have needed forgiveness and compassion, you become more willing to extend it to others. This creates a culture of openness and trust, where authenticity is celebrated and vulnerability is not met with scorn, but with loving acceptance. Within such a community, burdens are shared, joys are multiplied, and healing becomes a collective journey. Embodying God's grace also transforms the way you approach the challenges of life. Hardship is inevitable, and there will be moments when your faith is tested by disappointment, loss, or rejection. In those times, grace reminds you that you are not alone, that you are held by a love so strong it cannot be diminished by external circumstances. It shifts your perspective from despair to determination, giving you the resilience to keep going when everything in you feels like giving up. It is the quiet assurance that, even in the valley of the shadow of death, you are not forsaken. Over time, as you nurture your relationship with God and with a faith community, you may begin to see how grace shapes not only your personal life, but also your desire to serve the broader world. In a time when our global landscape is marked by division, conflict, and fear, grace stands as a radical alternative that defies conventional wisdom. Instead of seeking to dominate or defeat your enemies, you begin to wonder how you might show them the same mercy you have received. Instead of ignoring the cries of the marginalized, you feel a compassion that compels you to act. Instead of holding on to resentment, you choose to be an agent of reconciliation. This does not mean you become complacent in the face of injustice. Rather, it means your fight for justice is informed by love, compassion, and empathy, rather than by anger or bitterness. Grace can hold in tension the requirement to stand for truth, while also remembering that every person is beloved in the eyes of God. It is an invitation to live out a higher calling, one that transcends petty differences and sees beyond our immediate impulses for revenge. In that sense, grace is not just a personal gift. It is a worldview that can reshape societies, inspire movements, and heal broken systems when embraced collectively. At times, the challenge lies in sustaining that posture of grace amidst a culture that encourages competition, cynicism, and transactional relationships. This is why a continuous journey of spiritual growth is essential. Through prayer, worship, fellowship, and the study of sacred texts, you remind yourself daily of the truth that set you free. You realign your mind with principles higher than those found on social media feeds and in the chatter of popular culture. You recommit your heart to the love that first drew you in, allowing it to saturate your thoughts, words, and actions. As you persevere on this path, you will inevitably encounter imperfections in yourself and in those around you. Grace does not deny these imperfections. Instead, it acknowledges them honestly and points you toward a better way. It gives you the courage to admit fault without spiraling into despair, because your identity is not fixed to the mistakes you have made. It also gives you the courage to gently confront others with the hope of restoration rather than condemnation, believing that no individual is too far gone for redemption. In this way, grace becomes a cycle of receiving and giving. You receive it from God, who continually refreshes your spirit with new mercies. You then extend it to others who are in need of understanding and forgiveness. This cycle breaks the pattern of shame and retaliation that keeps so many trapped. It weaves a new story of empathy, compassion, and hope, which in turn invites even more people to experience the joy of spiritual renewal. If you wonder whether your own story can be rewritten by grace, consider the vast tapestry of lives that have already been transformed. Look at individuals who once carried the weight of addiction or heartbreak. Notice how they radiate a peace and a joy that defy their difficult histories. Observe those who once felt utterly alone, now surrounded by a supportive network of believers who walk alongside them in their struggles. Behold the radiance in the face of a person who has learned the power of forgiveness, who has laid down the burden of bitterness and walked forward in freedom. Those are not the results of mere self-help techniques or motivational speeches. They are the fruit of hearts awakened by love that does not demand perfection before it embraces you. At the core of all this is the beautiful promise that grace belongs to everyone. It speaks to the young and the old, to the wealthy and the impoverished, to those who are praised by society and those who feel unseen. It speaks in every language and through every circumstance. Whether you are in a place of triumph or at the end of your rope, it whispers in the night, calling you toward redemption when you believe all is lost, and it shouts in the sunshine, reminding you to rejoice in the gift of each new day. Embracing grace is not a one-time event, but a lifestyle of surrender and gratitude. It shapes how you approach your ambitions, how you handle your failures, and how you treat those whom the world might cast aside. It clarifies your priorities, reminding you that loving well is more valuable than being right all the time, and that serving others can bring deeper fulfillment than grasping for power and prestige. It challenges you to live authentically, to leave behind facades of perfection, and to let others see that you are a work in progress, daily learning how to navigate life under the canopy of divine favor. As you continue to reflect on the expansiveness of God's grace, allow it to challenge your assumptions about worthiness. Release the notion that you must reach a certain level of moral or spiritual achievement before you can be accepted. Recognize that grace was reaching out to you even before you were aware of it. Let that realization fill you with humility and gratitude, compelling you to respond with a heart that is softened, a spirit that is teachable, and hands that are extended to those who need a touch of love in their moments of desperation. When you begin to trust that this favor is real, you see how it envelops every aspect of your existence. It is there in the sweetness of fellowship shared with trusted friends, in the moments of silent prayer where words fail, yet tears speak volumes, in the quiet wonder you feel when you gaze at a star-filled sky and sense your connectedness to something far greater than yourself. Grace calls you out of isolation and into community, out of self-condemnation and into redemption, out of despair and into enduring hope. It is the unceasing current of love that carries you forward, even when the storms of life threaten to capsize your faith. If you choose to accept it, grace will shape your future in ways you cannot yet imagine. It will chart a course that weaves together your past pains, your present struggles, and your future dreams into a narrative of restoration. It will teach you that even in the trials that make you question everything, you are not abandoned. Day by day, grace beckons you to walk a path illuminated by mercy, letting go of the fears that held you captive and embracing the promise of a new dawn. As you stand at this threshold, the invitation is clear. Open your heart to the reality of God's grace. Let it wash over your wounds, soothe your anxieties, and infuse every corner of your life with the warm glow of divine acceptance. Embrace the astonishing truth that you do not have to earn this favor, for it is a gift offered freely through love. Lay down the burdens of guilt and shame and step into a new chapter of your story, one marked by hope, transformation, and a peace that transcends all understanding. This grace is not an abstract theory. It is a living, breathing promise that longs to anchor you in unshakable security, affirming that you are seen and cherished, not because of your resume or your reputation, but because you are a precious creation of the Most High. Allow the wonder of it all to settle into your soul, reminding you in every moment of joy or sorrow that there is a higher love sustaining you. May your journey be one where you continually discover fresh depths of mercy, where you are empowered to rise after every fall, and where the radiance of God's grace shines through you like a beacon of hope for those still lost in darkness. In this grace, you find rest for your weary heart, strength for every challenge, and an unwavering assurance that you are never beyond the reach of divine compassion. Step forward, beloved child of God, and let your life become a testimony to the incredible power of grace that lifts the broken, heals the hurting, and welcomes all who seek it into the arms of love.